Hello and welcome to Love Anything Art. Today I have a fun little project. I'm going to be making a rainbowish kind of pattern design using some alcohol inks. But first, let me tell you about a channel. It's called Made by Melly, and I love her stuff. She is a wonderful artist. Her stuff is so beautiful, so thought out, very original. She has great tutorials where she teaches you not only about the tutorial you're currently watching, but a lot of those techniques and tips can be applied to many different kinds of projects. So I'm going to leave a link below. Go show her some love and check out her channel. I'm going to be using translucent clay, and I know that some of it's kind of stained with some pink, but that's fine. It's not going to show or anything like that. So originally I was going to do just one version, but I decided, you know what, I want to try it two different ways just to see if in the end it comes out any differently. They're going to be very similar, the same colors and everything like that, but on this first one, I'm actually going to chop all of the pieces up, and I'm not going to blend in the alcohol ink colors. I'm going to just coat them in the alcohol inks. And then this is the other project. I'm just kind of flattening it. I don't know why at this point, but I'm going to put that aside and work on this first one. These are the colors that I'm going to be using. Just cherry, carrot. I wanted to do the colors of the rainbow. I just went online and looked up like the order it's supposed to go in, and then I tried to pick out colors that closely matched it just based on the alcohol inks that I have. And these come out differently when they're put on the clay, and then they come out differently once they're baked. So the colors are kind of optional, and you could not do a rainbow, you could do something else, but I kind of wanted a whole bunch of different colors in there. I was just letting you know there's a total of 7 colors. Those are little notes for myself. Usually I usually edit them out, but sometimes I leave them in. Oh, I think what I was trying to say also is that I cut these into 7 strips so that I could make them into 7 different colors, which is all of the colors that I used. I'm going to put those aside like officially and then just work on the little chopped pieces. I did chop them in like varying sizes. I don't think it really matters. You can make a big, small combination. I was just kind of randomly chopping. And for each of those, just put on a little tin foil, and I'm going to just dot it with the color that I want to use. This one is the cherry. Just making sure I get a nice coating over all of the pieces. I wanted to use some chalks, so I had some chalk pastels. I just chose colors that were as close as I could get to the color I was using in the ink. Luckily, I had a color that pretty much matched each one. I have quite a few pastels just from random art supplies. So I just did each one of those, and what I was trying to do is do a couple and then go back and work on the previous one. That way they had a little bit of time to dry, like the ink and stuff. But on some of these, I waited a little bit too long and they really, really dried out. So on some of them, I did have to add some Bacon Bond to try and get it to stick back together, especially since I did put the chalk pastels on there. It kind of helped absorb all of the alcohol ink and dried it out a little bit, which is fine. You just need a little Bacon Bond to kind of get it to be cohesive and stick back together. For each one of these, I'm going to form it into a rectangular tube and trying to get each one of them into roughly the same size. That way I can stack them together and make them into a blend almost. So that's the first one. Just set that off to the side, and then I just started working on all of them. It did take me a little bit to kind of go through all of those, but just put on a podcast and there you go. Lining up my colors, and I was thinking, you know what, I probably should have flattened these like the sideways a little bit more so that it wasn't so long, because then I had to like squish it up quite a bit. So I should have made them a bit thinner and then stuck them together and then kind of formed them and made them stick. If yours aren't sticking, I didn't have a problem, but if yours aren't, you might want to use some Bacon Bond in between each of those sections. For some reason, they stuck together really well. Okay, so that's the first one. This is the second one. Using the same colors again, translucent clay, just taking the color and I'm going to blend it into each one of these clay pieces. That way the color is throughout the piece, and then on the previous one it was just like the little coating around the outside. I wanted to see if it made it prettier or if it enhanced something about the design once it was all together. So you can kind of see for yourself. I have my own opinion about it, but we'll see. Each of those colors are kind of rolled up. And surprisingly, they came out pretty close in color to the chopped up one. Sometimes if you blend it in with translucent clay, you will lose some of your color, vibrancy, and content. But I think the colors themselves came out pretty darn close to one another. And then from there, after I blended it, then I chopped it, and then I coated it again in some of the same color. Just again, making sure it was blended really well. I was thinking maybe it might give it a darker color on the outside because it has more on the outside than inside of the clay. That was kind of the theory on that. I was trying to decide which side of this blade is the sharp side because they're both dull now. Silly little nuances. Again, I put some chalk pastels on there, and this one actually stuck together a lot better than the previous one, but I didn't wait as long in between forming it into the tube just like the previous one. But on this one, I did make them thinner, so I didn't have to do so much pushing together to get it to stick together. So I liked that a little bit better. It was a little less work. And I always find that I have to like clean up quite a bit in between when I'm using alcohol inks. Even when they're dry, they kind of leave stains everywhere. So I just have an old t-shirt that I use and just wipe it up. And those are my two. Now, I did leave these here for over a week because, well, that's what happens. You start to play with clay and then life pulls you away. So these might come out a little bit differently had I immediately cut into them and started doing things with them. But I did leave them here for a week, so this is what they look like after a week. It did make the clay a little bit brittle, so that kind of sucked. I had to play with it a little bit more to get it to soften up a little bit. So that's the thing. The longer you leave it there, it does tend to dry out a little bit, especially since it has the alcohol inks in there. It just kind of messes with the formula of the clay. So I took off the outside of both of them so that they were nice and even and crisp, and all of those little bits and bobs are off of there. And then I cut them in half because I'm going to make a set of earrings from each of these. And I don't know why I was really like trying to get them to stick together, because honestly I didn't need to, because the pieces I was cutting out fit onto each of those little sections. So I'm just using some paper cutters that I have. You can use any cutters you want to. I did want to make sure I was lining them up pretty correctly, like to make sure that the same colors were in on each of them at the same points, just so that it wasn't just kind of all over the place. With mine, I do like to, finish off the edges before I bake it because I don't like to sand. So if you want to sand, just cut and sand. It hurts my hands to do that, and I don't have all the tools and stuff like that. So I just used a piece of paper and kind of ran my fingers over it. That way I didn't like smear any of the ink, and the ink kind of got absorbed into the paper. And I just did that on both sides. And then for the tip at the top, because of the finding I'm going to put on there, it needs to be a little flat because I have made these before and it comes to a point at the top and then it gets rubbed and rubbed and rubbed and then it breaks off. So I do like to flatten it down just a little bit. You're not going to be able to see it once the little finding here is on there. And I think these are actually made for necklaces, but I really liked the way they looked with the piece, so I wanted to include it. And I was just showing you there. You'll see at the top, it's going to come just to the top, but it won't rub across it because it's not coming to a point. And just to line it up, I just laid it on the clay so that way I knew exactly where to poke my hole. You can poke the hole and then drill it after you bake it, but sometimes if you do that, especially with how brittle this was, you might break or damage the clay. So I was just making sure that I didn't make any chips or cuts or anything after I baked. So I just went ahead and pre-drilled it. It didn't take much time. I actually prefer to do it that way. I don't know. After I bake, all I want to do is resin. So, I mean, you can always just buff these out. They're really pretty that way, but I just don't have the tools and such. And then on the second one, I just took a circle cutter, which I was a little sad about because I couldn't get all the colors in there because the circle cutter wasn't big enough. And originally, I think I was intending to use the big circle cutter I have, but things just didn't work out, and I didn't want them to be that big for earrings. Anyway, so those are the center pieces that I cut out, and then I kind of turned it on its side so that the lines weren't horizontal for the top part, and then the lines weren't horizontal for the bottom. So one's vertical, one's horizontal. I don't know. I just thought it kind of added to the appeal of the piece. You'll see there as I lay it down, kind of go down instead of across. I'm just perfecting mine, putting them on my baking stone here, and then I'm going to bake them in the oven just according to the package instructions. This is them. I do have a video where I show how I resin, so if you're interested in that, links below. But these are the pieces. They came out really pretty. I just think they're beautiful. I just love all the colors together. I don't know. I think you could go all kinds of different ways. Choose different color themes, like an all blue, and like choose like 5 or 6 different blues or yellows. I just think that would be absolutely beautiful. And then this is the other one. So I'll show you here in a second the comparison between the two. Honestly, I think they came out very similar. There's a couple of the colors that behaved differently. The blue looks slightly different. Some of them look a little bit more muted, and then in other spots it looks very sharp and crisp, and then the color blends very nicely. The yellow and the orange on the right side. Anyway, this is my little project idea. I'll see you in the next one, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Bye!